Welcome. I am a realized being. It's much more accurate to say, I am realized being. What I am is exactly what you are. What it means to be a realized being, it means to be completely aware of what this is, as it is, in the way that it is. And what it means to not be realized is to think this is in a way that it is not actually, to hold it to be something other than it actually is. It's, in a way, it's splitting hairs. It's not that big a difference. However, the way that this is very specifically the way that it is. It is not vague, it is not imprecise, it is not general. It is exactly what it is. The problem with holding it to be something other than it is, holding yourself to be something other than you are, holding the world to be something other than it is it leads to frustration. It leads to unrealizable expectations and hopes, because we hope that we may hold that certain things are desirable, and we may hope that we can achieve them, and if these things are either not desirable or unachievable, then we're in for a life of frustration as long as we cling to that kind of a strategy. However, when we see exactly what this is, there's no disappointment, there's no frustration, there's no mismatch between what we hold ourselves to be and what we are, what we have. So what is this? Well, it can't be said exactly what it is in words. It can't be said what it is. It can't be captured in ideas. It can't be captured in human concepts. So if it could, we'd be able to sit here and say a sentence or a paragraph or whatever and say, okay, this is what it is, and then you could sort of memorize it and say and explore that and see the extent to which that correlates, and you could kind of learn it and get it that way. It's not like that. It's not that category of event. It's not that quality of happening. So we have to learn to let it show us what it is. Which is, and the only, the only impediment to that is that we already think we know what it is. We think we know what we are. We think we know what our world is. And we're pretty sure of it. I mean, we just think it's objectively true. And anyone that says we're wrong, we just laugh at them. We say, well, you don't know anything, you know. Which is all very well and good, except that if we're wrong, if we're holding it to be something that it's not, we're more or less in for a life of pain, as long as we persist in that strategy. And it turns out that what this actually is, what we actually are, is an absolute fullness, an absolute completeness. There is no lack. There is nothing that needs to be added. There is nothing that needs to be achieved. There is nothing that needs to be found that is not already here. And when we can see that for ourselves factually, actually as it is, this of course is a condition of great satisfaction and great fulfillment, because we see, oh, what I am, what this is complete, it's whole. It's already crossed the finish line. It's not broken in any way. It doesn't need fixing. So, my recommendation is, as best you can, try to suspend whatever you think you are, whatever you think this is, and in the space of that unknowing, in the space of that indeterminacy, look and see what's actually here. Look and see what actually this is, and let it show you what it actually is. it's not hidden, it's not concealed, it is not being blocked by anything other than itself and its nature. It happens that its nature is extremely foreign to all human conceptualization, to all human philosophy, to all human expectations, and this can make it seem dumbfounding, this can make it seem bewildering, because of course typically we approach this investigation in terms of our a priori knowledge, in terms of our ideas, human philosophy about what the world is, what reality is, what matter is, what space and time are, what beings are, and all of this. And all of that is completely wrong. And the way that this is what it is wholly different. It's wholly itself. It's exactly what it is, but it's not what anyone has thought it to be. It's not what anyone has held it to be. And so the only way to really see what this is to approach it nakedly, to approach it without expectations, without preconceptions, and let it show us what it is. Now, of course, that may be easier said than done, but the only impediment we have is ourselves. The only impediment we have is our own expectations and the degree to which we cling to our worldview, the degree to which we cling to our sense of what we already think we are, what we already think the world is, what we already think human beings are, which is no small thing, typically. Typically we're invested in our worldview, explicitly and especially subliminally and unconsciously. We think we know what things are, and it's tricky to try to disentangle that. However, our great good fortune is that there is a natural tendency of what you actually are, to discover what it is, that begins to come into play at a certain point in our evolution. And since you all are interested in coming to a talk like this instead of sitting home watching TV or going out, getting drunk, or beating up old people or whatever it is, this suggests that this impetus may be kicking in with you to a greater or lesser degree. So you are ripe for questioning your status quo worldview. You're ripe for questioning what you hold things to be. And as our grip on our worldview, our certainty loosens, that's when we have an opportunity to really begin to see what this is, for this to show us what it is.
We have a question from the internet already.
Yeah.
The question is, when nothing can be absolutely known, how can we know that we don't know what everything is or isn't?
You started saying nothing can be absolutely known. This is not true. Reality can be absolutely known, but it cannot be known as a concept. It can be not be known as a notion. It cannot be known as an idea, but it can be known directly through identity, because we are it. Your being right now, this being, your own beingness, you exist, right? You are this being. You know it. You are it. So, and this being that you are, that you know, is the same being that the world has. You know it. The world is. You may not know what it is or how it is, but it is. So we have direct access to this beingness because we are it. So we can know this certainly. But it's not a category of conceptual knowing like humans are so infatuated with. It's not a category of being able to say what it is, being able to define it, being able to argue about it. It is a direct, experiential knowing. If you're interested in discussing, we have a little microphone we're passing around. The room's a small room, we don't really need it, but that way people online who may be following along can hear what we have to say.
Just the first thing I always see, it's attention. Where to put it? Not at really. It's just always a question of attention. Do I go to my third eye? Do I look inside my body? Do I look at the total space in the room? So it seems to always be a question around attention. I say that I'm not necessarily looking for a single answer or a conceptual whatever, but for me the exploration always, I'm reminded that my preoccupation always seems to be, whether I'm aware of it or not, is attention and what to do with it.
Well, what I would suggest is, instead of worrying about doing something with your attention, look what it is. The attention is always present to one degree or another. So what is it? What is it? And whatever the attention is on, it will be on reality, because it cannot be on unreality, because unreality does not exist. It has no existence. It is not perceivable. So whatever your attention is on is reality. So you can look at whatever your attention happens to be on and try and let yourself see what it is. Try and let it show you what it is without any expectations. Or conversely, you can look at the attention itself and try and see what it is. Again, without any expectations, without holding any a priori notions of prior ideas of what your attention is. And any portion of the event you look at, reality will reveal itself. Reality reveals itself in attention, reality reveals itself in the object of attention, and reality reveals itself in the fact of the engagement between the apparent attention and the apparent object. Unreality does not exist. So anything whatsoever that is present will reveal reality.
I believe what you're saying. I haven't experienced that yet. So for me, wherever my attention goes seems to be the quality of my experience. It's either low or high, or so my attention, it's always a qualitative experiential experience. I can feel the truth of what you say, but I haven't arrived there, so there's always something I like more or less, and it's all based on attention
Right.
and experience.
Yeah. Liking something more or less is predicated on the basis that you already know what it is to some extent. Okay? You can't like something or dislike it unless you know what it is in some way, subliminally, or, so in some sense you're knowing what it is. It's impossible to look at an unknown and like it or dislike it, because there's no framework for holding that kind of opinion, for forming that kind of judgment. Now, it turns out that nothing whatsoever that we can possibly experience can we know exactly what it is in terms of as an objective reality, as an event. So nothing whatsoever can we accurately hold an opinion that we like it or we don't like it. But the point of this is that if you're having qualitative assessment of your experience, that means that subliminally, or maybe not so subliminally, but at least subliminally, you're thinking you know what it is. And this thinking you know what it is a fantasy. It will always be a fantasy. And this is the impediment. So, as I said in my opening remarks, our challenge is to be with this with absolutely no preconceptions. In other words, see, but have absolutely no idea what it is you're seeing. But something will be there. And then, in that context, in that openness, investigate. Let it see what is there. When you don't know what it is, what is it? So this is my suggestion. And granted, this can be a difficult thing to do when we find ourselves automatically having these kind of qualitative assessments. But just knowing that's the case potentially enables us to play with this, enables us to explore this and see if that's viable for us to any degree.
We have another question from the ether. Is the feeling or intuition that what you say is true, and is it a part of direct knowing?
What was the first part of that?
I had to paraphrase this slightly because it doesn't make sense. Is the feeling or intuition that what you say is true a part of direct knowing?
Certainly it can be. That you even hear me say anything is certainly a part of direct knowing. That you're having an experience is certainly a part of direct knowing. That you have a feeling about it is part of direct knowing. And the accuracy or relevancy of that feeling remains to be seen. And this is your challenge, is to find what is true, to find what is real. Again, not by a process of logic or a process of argumentation, but by direct presence, by being with this and seeing what it is.
So, from your perspective, that perspective, looking out at this, us, who seem to have no idea or have many ideas about what's going on, none of which are reality, is it for you then alternately hilariously funny, alternating with greatly sad? Or how is it for you?
It's certainly not sad. It's not particularly funny. It's interesting. What's interesting is that this can so readily misunderstand itself so completely is fascinating. It's also fascinating that this has a natural tendency or a natural urge to come to understand itself when it begins to ripen, let's say, and that this understanding can actually occur. This can actually know itself as it is, even as it can effortlessly, completely misunderstand itself. And the whole thing is fascinating in every degree. You know, you can sort of peel off aspects of it's funny, it's wild, it's nuts, it's sad, it's tragic, but it's actually just it's the natural evolution of things. It's the pattern of things. It's like saying that it's sad that chicks are born inside of eggshells and have to peck their way out. But in the context of the evolution of the species, it makes perfect sense. There's a logic to it. And likewise, it seems that whatever natural process we consist of typically has this sort of a metabolic arc where it lives in ignorance of itself and eventually reaches a certain point where it begins to investigate and ultimately discover itself as it truly is. So it's certainly fascinating in every way.
And in reviewing, as I'm presuming that you might have your own process of reaching that point of with a popcorn popped, what made you have learned about that process that could assist us, if anything, given we live in the mind and our concepts?
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to share that. You know, the number one bit of advice or tip or whatever is nothing you think about what you are, what this is true. Nothing you think about what you are or what this is accurate. That's a good starting point. That begs the question, oh, wow, okay, then where am I? What's going on? And those are very good questions. But you can't meaningfully ask those questions until you get it that nothing you know is true. Because we have an arrogance of naivety. We have an unsophisticated, typically, an unsophisticated arrogance that's, we're right, we're pretty impressed with ourselves, we're pretty bright, we kind of got a handle on things. I mean, I've got a lot of life experience, I know who I am, I know what this is, I know what's going on, I know how to, drive from here to my house without getting arrested most of the time. I mean, I'm pretty savvy, But that arrogance, that thinking we know, even though it serves us well in terms of having an identity, having a socially functional persona, all that kind of thing, is actually our one and only impediment in terms of this more profound question of spiritual growth, call it, or of the natural process of unfoldment where we discover what we actually are, what's actually going on here.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I love the light. Mm. Yeah. Better take that up with the management. It's okay with me.
We would lose our video connection if we took down the lights more. The whole world is seeing this, people on all continents.
Yeah, it's a very good question. Look at that.
We couldn't hear the question because he didn't have the microphone.
He asked, that raises the question, why do we like the lights? Is it something inherent in us or whatever? And I said, yes, good, that's good. Look at that. Why? What do we like about light? What do we like about beauty? What do we like about sunsets? What do we like about, babies? What do we like about anything we like? An equally good question is, what do we dislike about the things we dislike? And again, I'm not approaching these things conceptually or analytically, but approaching them as an energy presence of what process directly, not analytically, what process is actually happening when we like something? What process is actually happening when we dislike something?
Do you just enjoy holding the microphone? Or?
No, it's all yours. Just come and get it.
He's the intermediary.
I see. So, I feel you've come to me at a good moment in that I'm actually in inquiry at this moment. In the past few months, I was much more into disruption, and it was not good. I mean, because I feel I didn't use satsang in a way that I myself was for my highest benefit, in the sense that what I was making an error in that the way I see this plane in general is it's ruled by this law of the mind. As we thinketh in our heart, so we become. Would you go along with that? As we thinketh in our heart, so we will become.
Well, this is our delusion. It's not actually true.
Okay, so tell me about that. Why is that a delusion? As we thinketh in our heart, so will we become.
Because it's not true. What we become is what we are, which is absolutely unthinkable. And what we are is a self-correcting system that ultimately leads to itself.
Mm-hmm.
So that all of our process of error, all of our thrashing around, all of our destructiveness is actually a part and parcel of this self-correcting system discovering itself.
Right.
You might say rediscovering itself, but that's splitting hairs.
Right, but I mean, just in the appearance, if someone produces regular thoughts, let's call them negative, like I am cursed or I am unlovable, it seems they produce an appearance where they may be cursed or unlovable. Does that seem true?
No, it doesn't produce anything. They're co-arisings. They're all, everything that happens, nothing that happens is causal. Everything that happens is caused, is an effect. The only cause is reality itself.
Okay.
Or you might, to put it in sort of religious terms, you might say God does everything.
Right, so to just follow this logic, the moment that someone is, let's say, cursed by the gods, let's say they're, like I say, they're murdering their best friend, whatever they're doing, whatever. So a thought arises in them at the same moment that has a negative quality. Would that seem possible?
Sure.
Okay, so that's easy for me. So let's just make that adjustment. So let's say there's a co-arising of negative action and negative thought. So what's happening in this one at this moment, and the reason I have to close my eyes is because it's so inward. It's like hard to bring it out to you, particularly since the only reason I really trust you is because you worn the shirt that's the same color as mine this morning.
Good reason.
The sweater. I mean, I just see that as so beautiful. But other than that, I just don't know that you're trustworthy. I mean, I don't know that you're untrustworthy, but your website seemed a tiny bit pretentious, but I couldn't tell if that was just the necessity of conceptual language or whether that is true of you. Are you in any way pretentious?
No.
Okay, so thank you. Okay. My favorite section of your website was the section on non-existence, in that it just tapped me into a moment where I didn't exist. So I was so appreciative of that. So, I mean, there's actually, at this point, you've only created positive moments in my life. So, particularly your purple sweater. But rather than that, okay, so let's be serious. So, okay, so inwardly what's happening at this moment is that, as far as I could see, there's no negative thought arising for many, many weeks. I mean, it's positive results, positive thoughts, and, interestingly enough, there's not stillness. In other words, it's all these good special effects. Like I see about 25 clients a week, and each of them, I'm a psychotherapist, each of them is making interesting progress. I seem to have, my view is a city of just loving people. So these are sort of random people almost from the street, and I can love each of them. I mean, what a gift, and each of them grows in their own way. And so there's only positive experience, and yet what's being denied me is what I feel you have intuitively is an experience of stillness, in that I'm in Shakti, I'm in movement, I'm in shift, change. It's all good change, but it's not still. So what I see, the reason I'm coming here tonight is I'm interested in being still. So what I did this last night before I came here, what it is I'm hardly sleeping these days. So I slept 2 hours last night. So I'm up all these extra hours and I can just generate positive thoughts. So these are the thoughts I generated. I went, okay, in the appearance, I am separate from Peter Brown. So in reality, I'm not separate. So what thoughts do I want to generate? And these 3 thoughts came up. Be still, cultivate freedom, and relax into the eternal. Anyway, that's what came up. Do those seem like positive thoughts? Be still.
They seem like barbs to use to torment yourself, to me.
They seem, say it again?
They seem like barbs to use to torment yourself, to me.
Barbs to torment. Mm-hmm. Yes, okay, so It's obvious that I meant to be here. So I didn't know that they were barbs to torment myself. So tell me how I've just been, by the way, I traveled a lot in my 20s, so I saw in Mashhad, Iran, people flagellating themselves, actually putting, like I said, iron chains on each other's backs and very bloody. And so what I'm getting from you is that I've just done self-flagellation. Does that seem about accurate?
In a sense, not necessarily a one-to-one correlation, but
no,
it's
that's
possible.
What came up. Anyway, but
Okay.
So tell me why these, so I don't know something that you know. Why are these barbs that are tormenting me to say, it seems so positive to be still,
Right.
Like I say, cultivate freedom, relax into the eternal. Wow, it seems like a warm bath. But yet
Right.
I do see that you're more right than I. So why are these barbs to torture myself?
Okay. Approaching things in terms of positivity and negativity is a way to torment yourself. Approaching things in terms of thoughts is a way to torment yourself. What this actually is non-conceptual. It's beyond thought. What this actually is whole. It's entire. It's beyond positive and negative. So as long as you approach it in terms of thoughts or in terms of positivity and negativity, you are essentially in fantasy. You are in a version of things which can only exist in your imagination, because the actual version of things, objective reality, does not exist in the terms that you're trying to approach it in, i.e. positivity and negativity, activity and stillness, these kinds of things. What this is what it is, which exists in its own terms. It doesn't conform to our notions of positivity and negativity, of good and bad, of activity and stillness, all these things. These aspects of these qualities arguably can be found in what this is, of course, because hence the justification for holding these ideas and talking about them. But it turns out that they are not accurate because they do not address what this actually is in the way that it actually is.
Do you like the word ineffable?
It's a nice word.
So is there anything here? Okay, so here I am. Maybe even tonight it'll happen again. I'm in bliss between 2 and 5. I have 3 free hours. I'm in separation. There's still like a world that I'm still, unlike you, caught in appearances. Would you have any suggestion what I could do between 2 and 5 a.m. when I'm in this blissful, positive state?
Well, the same advice that I would give to you when you're out of the blissful, positive state, which is to try and see what it is outside of the context of being either blissful or not blissful.
Which is?
Well, it can't be said, but
So-
it can be experienced.
And in your view, am I experiencing it at this very moment?
Always. There's nothing else to experience.
So, in a way, you're the opposite of someone who is a coach or a guide. And that all you're saying that whatever you do is the right thing to do.
Well, I can say that in one sense, but I can also give you a whole lot of very specific advice if you're interested in that.
Yeah, so why not try? We'll see see what's going to happen probably is I'm going to become resistant, but we'll see. Maybe your advice will be very skillful and I might even listen.
Well, I don't know.
So let's try. Let's give it a try.
My advice would be to play with or explore the idea that your experience exists beyond conceptualization.
Which I believe.
That you right now you're actually experiencing. For example, if you open your eyes, you're experiencing a field of light. This is not an idea. This is not a thought. It's not good. It's not bad. It simply is what it is.
Right.
You're experiencing a field of sensation and touch.
Right.
Likewise, it's not a thought. It actually exists. It is neither good nor bad, and so on and so forth. Even your field of mentation, as a field of experience, is the presence of a mysterious, let's call it an energy field, that aside from the fact that we think of it as consisting of conceptual thoughts, as a field of experience is likewise a neutral, whether or not it's neutral, it's a present field of actual experience that is not a thought, It's not an idea. So right away, we have this vast arena, this vast field of direct non-conceptual experience that we have access to. We have light present. This is not a thought. This is an actual presence. We can be with this light experientially. We can be with it as a texture. We can be with it as a mysterious presence in our consciousness, and let ourselves try to notice what this is very directly and non-conceptually. And again, because we have active minds typically, we will spin off all sorts of thoughts and stories and analyses, and this is not a problem, but realizing that our conceptual mind takes up a very small portion of the real estate of our experience. Our experience is vast. It's a vast field of actual present, call it energies, call it consciousness. And if we look at this field and try and assess how much real estate, so to speak, our thinking mind takes up, it's pretty small compared to the amount of non-conceptual energy that's present. So we can notice this. We can be with this non-conceptual energy which is present, and we can try and let it show us what it is. And this is let it show us what it is a very imprecise kind of a euphemism for be with it and try and grok it. Try and just feel it and like, wow, there's something happening here, isn't there? Yeah. It's like experiencing a warm bath by taking your hand and dipping it into the water. You're not thinking about it, but you're learning a lot more about water than if you read in the Encyclopedia Britannica article on what water is. And likewise, we are existent in this vast field of non-conceptual, actual, real energy. It's right here, right now. It's present always. And we can explore it very directly, experientially, and non-conceptually, because we have access to it.
Yes, I think I've done that 100%, so now let's move on. So at this point, I'm not in my thoughts, I'm not in my concepts, I'm just letting you in. There's the thought that, to the extent that any thought came to mind, it was this thought: what's wrong with right now unless I think about it? And I wasn't thinking about it, so there was nothing wrong with right now. I feel your beauty, your perfection, it's just all non-conceptual, so I'm with you. So now
but you're thinking about my beauty, my perfection, that's a concept. What do I have to do with it? I'm an idea in your mind.
It wasn't even conceptual, it's just what is. And I mean, your shoes are beautiful. I mean, it's not really thinking that. It's just that if I bothered to think, they would be beautiful, but I'm not even bothering to think.
Cool.
So so I'm there. So where do I go from there? This
That's
happens
it.
to me
Stay
most
there.
of my life. So
Stay there.
Well, I am there. I'm there
Cool.
most of the time. So maybe I'm enlightened, I just don't know it.
Maybe.
No, but I think you have something I don't have.
Well, you think that, there's a thought.
Well, okay. So
what's wrong with this moment if you're not thinking about it? And if you're thinking that thought, or you're not thinking about it?
So, as you know, you're cleverer than me. See, you must be very smart if you're smarter than a Jewish person.
I'm not smart.
Okay. She wants the microphone. See, she got stimulated. You were laughing before.
I know you can cook kitchery. There's a place I get lost between this vast experience of isness and cooking kitchery. The difference between the two is getting less distinct every moment. I think you don't get lost when you cook kitchery, nor when you drive home from here. You don't get lost into... I can see how you could drive home and not get arrested, or get arrested, and still stay in the vast space. I may have just answered my question, but thank you for letting me ask it.
There's no difference between the vast space and anything whatsoever, because the so-called vast space is just a word for this, and there's nothing other than this. Driving home is this, making khichdi is this, asking questions is this, being confused is this, experiencing a difference between things is this. So there's nothing separate from this. It's just we misunderstand this, so we think there's separation. But this has an infinite range of modes, and every one of those modes is its natural modes. Confusion is its natural mode. Thinking things are separate is its natural mode.
And you're convinced it's self-correcting.
Whether or not I'm convinced is irrelevant. Look and see. The point isn't what I'm convinced. The point is, what do you see? I mean, life is living. Life is happening right here, right now.
I'm convinced it's...
Can I hold it?
I am not using the microphone correctly.
Yes, Jeff.
Yes, indeed. I'm convinced it's self-correcting, but that's a thought. So I'll look more.
Self-correcting without volition? Is it self-correcting without volition, without in the absence of volition, or
Yes, it's inherently self-correcting. It inherently goes where. Let's put it this way: instead of self-correcting, which is a bit precious, why don't we say it's going where it's going, inalienably, because it is what it is. And observably, it happens to be going in a direction we might call maturation. It happens to be going in a direction we might call unfolding. Plants grow from seeds into plants. Humans grow from babies, where we're ignorant and relatively dysfunctional and shit in our pants and can't walk, and then we can get older and mature and we can kill each other and steal each other's money, and then eventually we get older still and maybe we get a little bit of wisdom. This seems to be the natural tendency of things, observably, and so we can arbitrarily define this as moving into wisdom, moving into fuller expression, moving into maturity, all these kinds of notions. But again, all of this is relatively superficial. Certainly it's doing what it's doing, and clearly it can't be stopped. Life doesn't do what we tell it to. Life is living us. This is the fact. So it behooves us to surrender to that fact, or stop pretending that it's not true, which is just denial and more insanity, and be with it as it is, and let it show us what it is, which is all I'm advocating here, if anything.
and how does it know? How does it know to correct itself? I mean, in a sense, it feels very complacent for me. I seem to. See. I'm not sure I have a question.
It knows to correct itself because that is its nature. It is incredibly intelligent, hyper-intelligent, inconceivably intelligent inherently. And by intelligent, I mean functionally structural. Look at the laws of physics. Look at, look at this machine. Look at society. Look at these incredible, inconceivable, precise interactions of the aspects of this with itself. So obviously there's an astoundingly high degree of functionality here, an astoundingly high degree of what we might call intelligent structure, and we see it in ourselves too, in our psychologies, in our bodies, in every aspect of what this is, what we are. So how it knows to do it, so to speak, is self-evidently in this aspect of what it is. That it is functional. It's not inert. Reality is not inert. Reality is doing the universe. Reality is doing astrophysics. Reality is doing life. This is pretty darn functional. It may not be a functionality that you would do if you were doing it your way. You might not make humans such an incredibly cussed species, such a blot in the biosphere. And yet, who are we to argue with the universe? Who are we to argue with life itself?
I seem to be lacking in, it seems that my story is that I'm lacking in an X. An intellectual, seem to be lacking some intellect to promote the self-correction. And I know that sounds almost contradictory to what you're saying. I'm not an intellectual, and I think I should be in order to really navigate to this place of peace.
There's many, many, many types of functionality, and very few of them are intellectual.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's all sorts of in other words, we use this word intelligence, and we're typically chauvinists for intellection. We're chauvinists for higher learning. We're chauvinists for language skills and number skills and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It's completely arbitrary. There's a full spectrum. There's myriads of kinds of intelligence. There's intuitive intelligence. There's textual intelligences. There's idiot savants who you would say intellectually are pathetic and yet have a functionality that is vastly beyond most people's in some specialized areas. So it's very arbitrary to pick an area where you feel you're deficient and worry about it. Instead, I would suggest find the areas where you're strong and revel in them.
Yeah, thank
Enjoy
you.
them.
Yeah, there is a real strong intuitive nature.
That's great.
It's beyond intellect. I mean, it's a felt sense.
Yeah. Hey, who says that's not intelligence? Maybe human philosophy in 200 years will be completely looking down on intellection and be exalting intuition. Just because we poo-poo it these days with our the flowering of the materialist revolution and the when society discovered mechanics and assembly lines and all of this kind of materialist investment, and started to glory in in all of this learning and stuff. But this has just been in the last few hundred years. There's all the other kinds of intelligence, and different societies value them to different degrees.
Yeah, well, thank you, because I have a tendency to obsess over what I perceive to be lacking, and I worry about that deficient capacity, and I diminish what's true, and so if I could just relax into knowing that the self-correction process is happening in spite of me.
Yeah, look and see if it's true. I think you'll find that it is.
I'm not even sure if these words are resonating as truth, but it sounds good. I mean, it really sounds good.
Well, but explore this yourself. As you say, if your intuition is strong, explore it intuitively.
Yeah.
But by the way, I think you're quite articulate. I don't see much evidence that you're particularly deficient in your intellect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will. I'm just in this moment. It feels okay. Non-conceptual, it is this. This is it. It seems that it should be more it should be more than this, but this is really it. This experience.
There is no more than this.
So, do we exist? Do I exist? Is my universe? Is it just my universe? And are you a projection of my of my imagination? Is it real?
It's just your universe, but there's no you. There's just universe, and you are that.
No me. So if there's no me, and there's just universe, and there's no you, and there's no universe, then is there nothing? Is there?
There's nothing that you can meaningfully address. There's nothing that you can accurately... Yes, it's a trip.
If that's true, then really...
Yeah, look at it.
Wow. It's beyond anything.
It's beyond anything.
So now what? So now what do we do?
Now this.
And how does this translate to living in the world?
Effortlessly.
But you're living effortlessly. That's not my... Well, it is now. It's always wanting something, yeah.
Something always happens. That's what we call effortless living. Something always happens. Sooner or later you will put down that microphone. Sooner or later you will get up from that chair. Sooner or later you will move your body in certain ways. Sooner or later you will have certain thoughts. Sooner or later you will say certain words. This will happen.
So it's not personal.
Of course not. It's not personal, and yet you are that. There's no impersonal, but there's no personal. There's just this.
And what about right action? Is there such a thing?
There's just this. The action of this is right action. But is it action?
Is it just another concept, right?
Yes.
So what isn't a concept?
This.
Oh.
This alone.
Wow.
This is not a concept. This is real.
Yeah. We're not through with this Elliot doesn't care.
So we ended with me saying that you were smart and you saying that was not true. Could you say why that's not true?
Because that's a concept, and what I am and what this is not accurately addressable by concepts. It is what it is. I may be smart, but I'm also stupid. I may be functional, but I'm also a walking basket case. You know? I mean, in other words, anything you can say about me is partial, so it's hence untrue, hence inaccurate, so why bother?
Mm-hmm. So I have, what can I say, an intuition that I can leave this gathering, and I gather it ends at 9, so I have 37 minutes, feeling not separate than who you are. So in other words, my conceptual name is Eliyahu. I assume you go by Peter. Does that sound... I mean, I know it's not who you really are, but does Peter sound like as good?
I frequently answer to that name, yeah.
Okay. So I have the sense that it's opening where by 9 o'clock tonight, when this satsang comes to its conclusion, that who I am will not be separate than you. So I don't know if these words are going to help or not, but I'm going to try to see if they might. So one way that in the past I would experience that would be erotically. But, I could give you a big kiss, or, my own sense is that that's not appropriate for this occasion, and there's actually not erotic energy happening. Do you have any sense if that would help me to feel not separate from you?
Well, you're raising a whole bunch of issues. Why would you want to not feel separate from me? Why I would suggest don't feel separate from yourself.
Well, that's the key, but
Are you separate from this? Why use me? Why not use the floor? Why not use the wire? Why not use Berkeley? Why not use this room?
You're willing to talk to me, and I'm in my fucking head. So being in my, it's my head.
You aren't in your head.
What?
You aren't in your head.
I am not in my head.
No, that's just an idea.
I think I'm in my head.
Yeah, well, you're thinking you're in your head is just a thought. Whereas,
Right.
you know.
But the thought doesn't tell me that it's just a thought that I'm in my head, and you do. So you are useful to me.
Okay, I'm
going to
useful.
use you. Do you
Okay.
feel used by me?
No.
I paid $10, so maybe you'll feel better about being used by me because...
Well, I don't feel used by you, so that's irrelevant.
Okay. But does it help that I paid you $10?
No, because you didn't actually pay it to me. You paid it to the club.
Oh, okay.
I don't see any of that. And
You don't get any of that
want
money?
No, this is not about money.
Okay. Well, that actually helped me to feel less separate from you. So now we're moving along because, okay, so if what I want, as you say, is not to feel separate from myself, and I'm using you, can you admit this? If I have a moment of total oneness with you, it might assist me in not feeling separate from myself.
Anything that happens might assist you in not feeling separate from yourself, because again, it's a self-correcting system, and whatever happens will ultimately lead to you not feeling separate from yourself.
Right, but let's say if I really trusted you 100%, and I just got that Peter Brown was a Mahasiddhi, the guru, was light himself coming down, and I just surrendered totally to you, it might create a shift in my own relationship to myself.
Possibly, who knows?
It might, or it might not. But let's go for it, because I did have a Mahasiddhi that you mentioned on your website. I spent about 4 weeks with a gentleman named Nimkaloi Baba when I was a very young man in India. I was just 28 years old and knew nothing about the spiritual path. I almost feel like crying now, just even mentioning him, in that his grace was so apparent, and yet I was so in my head that my biggest achievement was being kicked out of the ashram. I mean, I got told Jao because he read my mind, and I said, he's not as smart as me, and he read my mind and kicked me out. So anyway, but the feeling was that I got the sense of no separation from him at the moment, because I think it's very interesting when someone just reads your mind. It assisted me at that moment. The other thing that he assisted me with is the only miracle of my life.
What did he assist you to accomplish?
Well, this is the only miracle of my life. So let's say if miracles do something. So the only miracle of my life, I lived 65 years, occurred the moment of his death. So let's just go there, because that was my best moment of non-separation of my 65 years. So he had just left his body, and a friend of mine comes crying up the hill with a telegram saying, Nimkaloi Baba is dead, the burning is today. And what I was doing in my very, like I say, Jewish way is eating. So I was eating walnuts. These were the most delicious walnuts from the Himalayas that I was, living in his ashram in Kinchin in Nainital. And I was just eating walnut after walnut, putting it on the rock, and hitting it and looking at the beauty of the walnut and then eating it. So the announcement comes, he's reading it, and I just dropped the rock that I had on the walnut, and the walnut opened and there was no nut inside. Now every other walnut had a nut. I mean, it was like 200 of them, and there was just no nut. And he had actually talked about the ego being like the shell of a nut, and it was empty inside. And here, at the very moment I hear of his death, there's an empty nut. So, I was just astounded. And there was a sense of the rightness of the universe, of how God, he was giving me this immense gift, and that it was just so right, and there was no separation between who he was and who I was, and there was just a sense of grace, which I still can feel tears just talking about it. So did that experience in any way assist me? I mean, there's a nut here, and it's empty. I do know that. Maybe I don't know that. See, I think I know nothing, actually.
Good. Know nothing.
Do you know something?
Yes.
Tell me what you know.
Yes.
So,
this is a miracle. This is the only miracle. Nimkaloi Baba is this. That empty net is this. You are this. The dust on the floor is this. This is not a concept. It's a fact. And your egotism and your self-importance of investing yourself in all of these narrations of what's happening to you and what's not happening to you is quite appropriate for where you are in your inevitable self-correcting process of being what you are, which ultimately becomes, or we should say flowers into, realizing what you are. So, in other words, all of this splitting hairs of calling it this and that, and this is special and that's not special, and this is a realization, that's not a realization, is a silliness, because it's all just your life, and your life is ongoing. This moment is your life, an hour ago was your life, a day ago was your life, a week ago was your life, when you were with Maharaji it was your life. It's your life now, it'll be your life on your deathbed. It'll actually be your life after your death, as you'll find out. And this process is the only thing that's there. There are no milestones, there are no mileposts, there are no realizations or non-realizations. There is this event, thisness.
So, many people have told me that I have a narcissistic personality structure in which I love to be special and I have a sense of entitlement. Let's just say for a moment that's true. Would you have any repulsion to me if that's true?
No, not at all. Go for it. Enjoy it.
So what I'm hearing from you is that there's almost nothing I could do at this moment that would produce judgment in you.
Judgment? No.
Is there? Well, I mean, I realize that I could get thrown out of here if I did some really stupid things, but there would be, even then, there would be no judgment.
Correct.
And what gives you that power to not judge me?
Because I acknowledge you are what you are, and you can't be other than that, which is self-evident. Everything is what it is, and it can't be other than that. So judgment is an arrogance of thinking things can and should be different than they are, which is insanity. It's the definition of insanity, I would say, in my non-technical, pseudo-psychological framework.
So we're halfway there in that you don't actually feel separate from who I am. Is that true, that Peter Brown does not feel separate from who Elliot Eisenberg is?
There's no who there, but yeah, I am this.
Well, but you don't, okay, without the who, Peter Brown is not separate from me, from Elliot Eisenberg.
Well, what Peter Brown is not separate from what you are. But Peter Brown doesn't exist, you don't exist, only this exists. Peter Brown is a misunderstanding, it's an arbitrary designation of this, just like this floor is a misunderstanding, an arbitrary designation of this. There's no floor, there's no Peter Brown, there's no Berkeley, there's no Earth, there's no Milky Way galaxy. There's just this, and all of those are arbitrary partial designations of this, and they're erroneous in their incompleteness and in their omission.
So, have you ever heard of a woman named Byron Katie?
Yes.
So, it's part of my goal of non-separation with you, and I don't think this book has anything to teach you, but it is interesting that Katie put all of her wisdom in this small book. And I find it interesting that, as far as I know, Peter Brown has not done that. Is that true, that you've not put all your wisdom in a tiny book that's handed out?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to give you this book, not that it has anything to teach you, but it would just be a model of what I think you could give out at the satsang.
No, thank you.
And why is that?
I don't need books.
But you don't need books, but maybe you could help us lost sentient beings by putting all your wisdom in a few pages. Wouldn't that assist us to leave here with a few aphorisms that we could...
I've given you aphorisms. I record everything, all these talks, and the talks are available for download on my website, and you're welcome to transcribe them and give them out to people if you feel so motivated.
Right, but yet, let's say, as far as I could see, if you really wanted to get things distributed widely, a book wouldn't hurt, in that not everyone has a computer. Not, you're putting a little obstacle between Peter Brown and the dissemination of this wisdom. Is that possible? That not everyone has access to a computer.
I don't. I don't have any opinion or interest in anything you're talking about, really.
Okay, so let me just end with this one concept, which had a big effect on me, and I'm sure you're going to demolish, but I think it's separating me from you. It's that I took what's called a bodhisattva vow. Have you ever heard of that vow?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so what I understood it to mean is that I was postponing my own enlightenment out of sense of service to all other sentient beings. And that service was more important than anything that had even the slightest bit of a selfish nature, like emphasize my enlightenment. So I feel that that's part of the reason why I'm not being just this, in that I'm into service. Do you have any comments on either the Bodhisattva vow or my interpretation of it?
No.
Do you think it's a good thing?
It's not good or bad. You have to understand, though, that in reality there's no sentient beings.
So then it wouldn't be a great thing, would it? It's not a type of delusion that if I'm trying to serve sentient beings, I'm trying to serve delusional entities. So you could...
No, that's not true, because delusion is this too. So delusion is not a problem in the least.
But it seems, as far as I'm getting, that what you're trying to say during this time is that, this is what I'm getting, is that why bother with delusion when this is here? You could just always be with this, so why go into delusion?
Whatever. Your choice, if you have a choice.
But aren't you saying that if there was a choice, and there may not be, it would be better to be with this than with delusion?
No, I'm not saying that at all.
I see. Why wouldn't it be better to be with this than to be with delusion?
I'm not saying it wouldn't be better. I'm saying that your natural unfoldment will put you where you are, and eventually you will be aware that you are this, which you have always been and always will be.
Mm-hmm. So my own sense is that in order to be with you fully, I have to shed the bodhisattva vow, that I can't have other sentient beings. Does that seem possible to you that I'm correct in that?
No, you are with me fully, so that doesn't make any sense to me.
But I don't know them. I still feel separate from you. I promise you I'm still feeling separate from you. I'm not lying. I'm not,
Do you feel separate from yourself?
That's true.
I'm asking you, do you feel separate from yourself?
Sure.
You do? And what way are you separate from yourself? What's the boundary? What's the division? What's the division made of? Where does it exist?
It's in the realm of concepts.
Well, concepts are separate, but what if concepts you?
Well, there is a concept that Elliot Eisenberg should be something slightly different than who he is at the moment. Like now I'm feeling that he's talking too fucking much. And hey, why is he just talking? Everyone's probably saying shut the fuck up, and he's still talking, and maybe it's wrong, and he's still talking, and why doesn't it shut up? And whatever. So there's some sense of separate from who I really should be, because I should really be just shutting up.
But this is just an idea.
Of course it's an idea.
But you're not an idea. You're what the ideas occur in.
Right. So you don't have a sense that I should shut up.
I don't care if you shut up or not.
But they want me to shut up.
I don't know. I think you'd probably get a different opinion if you asked each one of them.
Do you want me to shut up? Yes. See, they all want me to shut up. No. So okay. I will defer to the majority. Yes, I was really done.
Yeah, I was ready for him to shut up, quite honestly, but I know Elliot quite well, so... but I didn't really have any... I wasn't going to, pull the mic out of his head. It was going to happen when it happened, so... I had a funny thought a couple of days ago, and it really was just this thought of why would I ever want anything to actually be different than it is? As a thought. I mean, it really just showed up very strong. It was just sort of, and of course there's constant resistance to what is. So that's not something I'm always in tune with. But then what I really started to notice was that there's a lot of sensation, let's just say sensation in my body, that when it could be seen as a resistance, that sensation shows up, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, something, this isn't okay as it is. But I really saw the absurdity of that thought, and yet the resistance seems to, maybe this body seems to have some conditioned response to something wanting to be different. Let's say I want my boyfriend to act differently, or my kids to, pretty specific things. So I guess that I don't really know if I have a question in that, but it was pretty, seemed like some kind of shift happened for me of just sort of seeing through that resistance in a way of, and just sort of letting it's okay. I mean, it's like, okay, the resistance is there. Even wanting something to be different is and that's what I'm hearing you say, is part of that.
Sure. Yeah. Another thing you can play with or try and notice if you find it interesting is that having resistance to anything or wanting anything to be different is predicated on thinking you know what it is in the first place. In other words, you have to have an idea that, oh, this is this, and I don't like it. Or this is this, and I wish it was that. Or this is this, and I wish it would mutate into a slightly different this. Okay. Now, the interesting thing is that if you look very closely at what you think something is, anything, it doesn't matter.
Right.
If you look very, very closely, you'll realize, or I should say, it's possible to discover that what it actually is incorporates elements that are not included in your concept of it. In other words, your concept of it is incomplete. Take a person. Say there's some person and this person rubs you the wrong way and you wish they would get out of your life or straighten up or whatever. Okay? If you really look at that person objectively, you'll say, yeah, but they have these other qualities that I'm not really including in my assessment, okay? Or objective things. You can say, gosh, this floor is kind of dingy and dirty and it could use with a refinishing. But then if you look really closely, you can say, yeah, that may be true, but it's really a beautiful wood, and the patina that it has from wearing is kind of nice. So in other words, to have a reaction to something, you have to be holding it to be a certain way.
I got it.
And if you look closely at the actual phenomena that you're reacting to, you will discover it has factors in it which you are not including in your definition, the way you're holding it to be. So therefore, the way you're holding it to be, what you're reacting to, what you're wanting to be different, is a fantasy. It's not the actual situation. This is basically a condition of insanity, because you're having a reaction to conditions that don't actually exist as such.
But it takes a certain I don't know if the word's willingness, but it would seem, because I can feel, being in that struggle and then having that willingness to sort of be able to look beyond the actual situation, how you're observing something, to go beyond that. And sort of, would it be to actually find, maybe just find something else, literally like the floor.
Yes. Yeah.
Just literally to sort of...
Yeah, that's the first step. First you find something else, and then you look again and you find something else than that, something else that you've already found, and then as you continue looking you discover there's always something else. Situations are literally infinite. That means there's an endless range of qualities that every situation actually consists of. Literally endless, not figuratively or poetically endless, but literally endless. So you can't, what this means, the implications of this are, you cannot definitively know what anything is in terms of its categorizing its qualities. And this is what we do. We think we oversimplify things. We arbitrarily get an idea of what we're thinking them to be, which is incomplete by definition, since things are an infinite range of qualities. We're taking a small set of those qualities. We're saying this is that. These qualities are the thing, and then we have a reaction to the thing based on these qualities. And it is insanity because the qualities we're holding are not what the thing really is. The thing actually consists, every actual objective reality consists of a literally infinite range of qualities. And there's no way we can sum those up into a coherent whole that we can then have a reaction to.
Yeah.
It's like people, if you look at people, I mean, superficially, someone, you might feel simpatico, or they might rub you the wrong way. But the more you look at someone, you go, my God, there's so much there. I mean, you get to know somebody, and you get to really know them, and then you get to know them further, and it's like, and it just keeps opening. There's always more. You can never get to the bottom of who someone is. It's not like, okay, now I really know you. Now I found the real you, because you're endless. You're bottomless. You're an endless fullness. And so, how can you like that? How can you dislike that? How can you have an opinion about it? Because it's like looking at the night sky and saying you like it or you don't like it. It's meaningless. You can't even say what it is. So how can you like it or not like it?
So
and this is the
habit,
mechanism to discover that.
That habit of like and dislike is so conditioned in us, and that's really the place where we can begin to really put our attention.
What I recommend is put your attention on noticing that the reality of our experience is vaster and wholly other than we're used to thinking it is. Anything whatsoever is much more than you think it is, period. No matter how sophisticated your idea of it is, it's wrong. It's an oversimplification.
I love that.
Well, look at it. You can find it because it's true. It's really the case.
Exactly.
And when you find that, the implications of that are very powerful. I mean, but really see it. Play with it, explore this, take your time, live with it, and just notice. Wow, I've been living in an oversimplified fantasy when I'm living in the midst of this infinite richness, this infinite variety, and I've been thinking it's dull and boring and limited and.
Yeah, thank you. Just one last piece. Thank you so much. That's very, very useful. But one last piece about intention and manifestation. Mm-hmm. So it would seem in this apparent illusion that there's this there's so much talk out there of you put your intention. I mean, I guess I have an intention. Is there an intention to get out of bed in the morning? Or does that thought just arise? And then at one point, like you said, doing is going to happen. I'm going to eventually put this mic down, or someone's going to grab it from me, or whatever. But putting one's intention or attention on something does, I struggle with that because there's a part of it that feels untrue to me.
Right.
And yet there's something that feels like I look at people who go, well, I mean, it's so much in the culture, now, and there feels like it's false. Yeah. And yet there's a part of me that goes, maybe, is there something there to pay attention to?
Like all ideas, this idea of intention and intentionality is an oversimplification. Of what? What's the actual phenomena? When you say, I'm having an intention, what am I actually referring to? Is it really an intention? If it is an intention, where does it come from? Did I have an intention to have the intention? Did I have an intention to have the intention to have the intention? Or did somewhere along the line of this causal chain, something just appeared by magic, by itself, non-intentionally, that led to the phenomena I'm calling having an intention? If that's the case, how can I meaningfully call it an intention accurately? And I'm not saying it's like that, but I'm suggesting examine the actual phenomena, and you will surely find that it's more subtle and complex than you're holding it to be, which is true of all phenomena, so it's an easy thing to say. Reality is infinite. Not in a vague sense, not in a metaphorical sense, literally infinite. And any phenomena whatsoever is infinite. This is the discoverable fact. And one of the natures of infinity is it's impossible to pin down as being this or that. And when you look at any actual phenomena like intention, and you discover the infinity that it actually consists of, it becomes gibberish to say whether it's intention or not. It's an inconceivable infinity, And anything whatsoever that you investigate, you'll discover is inconceivable infinity. What do you do with inconceivable infinity? Well, fortunately, we don't need to answer that question because it's taken care of. And this is that taken care of. This is inconceivable infinity taking care of itself. And everything we do, all of our arrogance and our pretension of what we think we're doing and not doing and liking and not liking is just us spin doctoring this inconceivable infinity taking care of itself. Pure and simple. And we can see this. We can see the truth of it. We can experience this very directly. And that is what realization consists of. When we see what's really going on here, that it's completely beyond all of our silly, simplistic analyses and concepts of it. It's just wholly beyond. The concepts don't even vaguely apply.
Thank you.
Do you like people?
No.
Could you say a little bit more?
No.
Does the concept of evil have any interest for you?
No concepts have any interest to me except to disprove them.
Mm-hmm. And not that far long ago, one of my clients cut up another one of my clients, and I'm the one to hear about it first. So, as you can imagine, it created an emotional reaction. If you heard that someone you had been working with had just murdered another person you'd be working with, might that create any reaction in you?
No.
Mm-hmm. So you could see that you're not a professional psychologist.
Right.
So, can I tease you, or you don't like being teased?
I don't care at all.
Okay. So, have you ever heard of something called the Holocaust?
I've heard rumors, yes.
So, part of the effect on a little Jewish boy learning that his family had been recently murdered is to somehow invest some meaning in the notion of evil. You know, like people that were devoted to killing my family members just because they happened to be Jewish created all sorts of ripples in the psychology of this little child, particularly because his mother taught him that it was about to happen to him too. So, can you see that that would be a possible, what could I say, source of upset in a little child?
Yes, all human ignorance and confusion is a source of upset.
Right. Well, do you think my mother mistook the fact that our family was actually murdered, or do you think that might have actually happened?
What happened, and it's not whether or not your family was murdered, it is taking the big picture of what actually happened, which was the unfoldment of humans being humans.
Right.
Which has all sorts of extreme ranges of dysfunctionality, largely, all of which has endless repercussions, typically of more dysfunctionality. But again, there is also self-correcting elements where elements of sanity and luminosity eventually come out of the system as well.
Right. So, one of the ways that luminosity came out of it was that particular woman whose book you just refused, named Byron Katie. I did a 9-day course with her in which I did a lot of work on the Nazis, and I got that I was genociding the moment by attaching to the story, that somehow my story about what the Nazis had done to my family, what was actually in my head, was genociding the possibility that I would be just with that in the moment. Does that make any sense to you?
Well, all of your concepts are just fantasies.
Well, my own guess is that someone really was gassed in Auschwitz.
Many people may have been gassed, but each one of those was an absolutely unique and individual event with absolutely unique and individual qualities in each case. And to generalize it all by saying that, X million people were gassed, it's not that that's untrue, it's just an oversimplification which renders it absurd.
Yes, but, okay, I did my doctoral dissertation on evil, and I made a friend with a certain man who was greeting the Jewish people as they came off the trains in Auschwitz, and he was instructed by his Nazi guards to grab the little Jewish babies and throw them in a bonfire that was there, because they didn't want to waste gas at that point. So he, would take the baby from the mother and just in front of the mother's eyes throw the little baby in a bonfire, and the mother would watch her little baby burn to death. Can you see that might have created an emotional reaction in the mother?
Certainly, all human insanity creates emotional reaction.
Right. And if you, at that point, had to say something, either to my friend who grabbed the baby, or to the mother, or even to the baby, do you have anything that you could, it seems that they're going through an experience of duality. It seems that, as far as I could see, you are quite courageous, and I really appreciate your courage in holding the space that you're holding tonight. And I wondered if you would have anything to say to all three of those people, to the mother, to the person carrying the baby, or even to the baby, or you just say, that's just what is.
Well, it's certainly what is, yes. I don't know what I would say. It would need to be in real time and in the circumstances.
Right. Do you think you might even feel a little bit of compassion for any of these people?
No.
And tell me about that. Why would there be no compassion?
Well, I would feel absolute compassion in one sense. Compassion is another notion that's widely misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
Compassion as a sentimental and individualized emotional reaction is more neuroses. Again, not speaking technically, because I'm not psychologically trained. The true compassion is the openness to one's experience, the transparency of experience, accepting experience as experience within consciousness, and being open and receptive, intelligently responsive to it. That's what compassion actually is.
So just for a moment, we're putting you there. You see the mother, you see the guy taking it, and the baby, presumably, there was a moment of fire before he was killed, so all of them are having unpleasant experiences. Mm-hmm. So how would you relate to the fact that they're having unpleasant experiences? Would there be any relationship in you?
I don't understand what you mean.
Well, let's say if you're there, you're somehow an observer at that scene. Would there be any way your heart would go out to them? Would there be any empathy that they were seemingly suffering? They all thought they were suffering.
Yeah. Suffering is, pain and suffering are two different things.
Well, no, let's talk. They were suffering because they had a story.
Yeah,
most of mothers had a story that the baby shouldn't be
say no more.
Yeah.
Suffering is always a result of reaction to story.
Right.
I.e. always a fantasy, i.e. always insanity.
Right.
And my heart goes out to anyone who is in insanity, which is why I do these talks.
Right. Okay, so let's say that the mother is some sort of advanced yogi and can just watch her baby be burned and say, this is just the moment happening, and has a story that, whatever. She just thinks this is what reality is. But yet there's pain at that moment because maybe she had hopes to raise the child or to see the child end up other than
hopes are insanity.
What?
Hopes are insanity.
Right.
Hopes are thinking you can steer reality. Reality is not steerable.
Right. So in essence what you're saying is that at any moment any of our babies could be thrown in the fire.
Self-evidently. The whole earth could explode and everyone would be thrown in the fire at any instant, as far as I know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we're getting pretty close to we have 2 minutes left, and I'm actually not feeling very separate from you.
You got 2 minutes. Come on, you can go the distance. I know you can.
Well, I'm not actually, I think you've done it. I'm not actually feeling separate from you at the moment. I don't know if it'll rise, but I'm feeling lots of gratitude for you for taking a seemingly impossible position, but it seems right and it seems courageous. So I think you've gotten the prize. I think at this moment I do not feel separate from you. So thank you. But then we actually have a minute to spare. So do you end these satsangs exactly 9? Are you sort of like a man of the clock?
Yes.
Okay. So let's see. There's just 30 seconds. If anyone else wants to speak for 30 seconds.
Any way you like.
You know, I'm just fucking enraged. You're an obnoxious fucking asshole. And you know, and he's my closest friend.
You guys an artist. Come on.
And you know, and
you got to appreciate QO.
And I love your lack of resistance, your openness, your heart. I'm not there yet, but I'm trying. I love him dearly, but he's so fucked up. Really, and he's a great therapist. He's a great therapist. Can you believe that? Imagine. In fact, one of his clients chopped up the other one. That's great therapy, yeah.
This is as a result of therapy. This is a testimony.
You know, it's just, why do I care? Why? What is now? I'm
No, that's a good one. Just stay with that. Why do you care? Where's that come from?
It's coming from.
Do you know where it comes from?
No. Do I need to know?
Not knowing is knowing where it comes from. Like everything. Where did this moment come from? Where did this discussion come from? Where did this unlikely gathering come from? So where did everything we say come from? And where's it gone to? It's gone.
It's gone. And
everything we said, it's gone.
So
it's gone forever. Where'd it go?
This would be considered the intelligence of self-correction, because I feel immense relief.
Yeah.
And I don't know where it came from, why, but I couldn't sit here another fucking minute and listen to that fucking asshole espouse another fucking word. Where's that coming from?
It's good, isn't it?
It is so good. It's like burn, you know, suffer. He just creates this endless suffering it's just wrong. I'm done. And I'm becoming him now, see how crazy I am?
Thank you all for coming. I hope you had as much fun as I did.
If you fail to put $10 in the box on your way in, please do so on your way out. It's what makes this possible. If we don't make the money, we don't have the event.